on the line by NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, who really needs no introduction. Adam, thanks for taking the time.
Absolutely. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, good to see you as well. We didn't plan to ask you this originally, but obviously this is very topical. Draymond Green got suspended. It was 5 games by the league. Can you take us through the league's decision making process with reaching that ultimate verdict?
Yeah, I'll just do it in short because Joe Dumars oversees discipline and he's spoken about it. It's obviously the conduct we saw in that instance from Draymond is unacceptable. He knows that, the team knows that, and we do take into account past conduct when we look at discipline, and that's how we arrived at 5 games.
So that means Draymond's going to miss a handful of time here, including, I believe, some in-season tournament action as well. So we'll pivot there. We are a little bit into the in-season tournament now. We haven't experienced it yet in Toronto. The Raptors have their first one on Friday. What have the early returns looked like for you guys from a ratings perspective, from a general response perspective?
Yeah, sure. The early returns have been pretty positive. From a ratings standpoint, we were up over 100% actually off the weekend from last year. And the second weekend, we were up over 50% from the prior year. So that's been really positive, and attendance has been up as well. But most importantly, the players are really into it, and the coaches and the teams have been very engaged and excited about it. And that's what's most important. I think that's what will ultimately translate into the most interest from the fans.
We've certainly seen some interesting courts, some interesting new jerseys. What have you liked or disliked about those? And what does the league have planned in that regard for these neutral site semi and finals games down in Vegas?
Well, so I'm a fan of the courts. I'm enjoying all the banter about them. Clearly, some may need a little bit of tweaking next season. But the notion was, in having those different and colorful courts, that with all the different programs on television and many games over the course of the season, that when people were flipping channels, they would see those games and they would realize instantly that something different was happening there. And frankly, even for the players, we thought to make the visual imagery different, whether it's the courts or the uniforms, that they would get up for those games and that they would know there's something special. And from that standpoint, it's been effective, and it's our same plan for the neutral site games in Las Vegas. That's our, in essence, our Final Four that will be using special in-season tournament courts as well.
Right. And so when you look back on this after the year one of this launch, what will constitute success for you for the in-season tournament in year one and also long term?
Well, of course, ratings and attendance matter to us, and the early indications are very positive there. But most importantly, I think it will be the engagement that we see from our teams. As I mentioned, early indications are very positive, and I've said before that it's going to take a while to establish a tradition that's lasting, and we're not expecting this to be the equivalent of winning the Larry O'Brien Trophy. But I think if coming out of this first season that there was a lot of excitement around winning this new NBA Cup, that the teams play hard and it's competitive, that's what we'll look to see, and that's the most important indicator at the end of the day, is how competitive the games will be.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great sign right now of how competitive these games have been so far. You are seeing players respond to it, which is, I'm sure this is exactly what you guys have wanted to do. I wanted to shift over to expansion. You had mentioned Vancouver, Mexico City, and Montreal as possible expansion cities, in addition, obviously, to many U.S. cities as well. From the Canadian side, obviously, we're really curious to see how the league views the viability of Vancouver and Montreal specifically.
Well, what I think I said, I was talking about cities that have expressed interest in having an NBA franchise. There are no active expansion discussions going on at the league right now. And what I also said in that interview was that the Raptors have done a great job becoming Canada's team. Of course, we used to have a team in Vancouver, but once they left the market, I think the Raptors really stepped up, and it's amazing what's happened in terms of NBA basketball over the course of the existence of that franchise, to the point now where outside of the United States, the largest number of players come from Canada. I think it's 26 right now, Canadian players in the NBA. So I think that's part of a great indicator of how much fan interest has grown and developed since the Raptors came to Canada. Having said that, and this is what I was referencing the other night, we have heard from other markets, including Vancouver and Montreal, about their desire to have a team. I think at some point the league will turn back to expansion, but it's not an active discussion we're having right now.
Can I ask you just about the nature of sort of those approaches from Vancouver and Montreal? Like, are there ownership situations sort of ready to go and making this push, or are there more sort of cursory conversations at this point?
They're cursory largely because the league has told interested groups, whether in Vancouver or Montreal or any city for that matter, that we're not ready to engage right now. So other than letters I've received, occasional calls, public officials, in various cities, we've studiously avoided taking that next step because we wanted to be fair to everyone involved. And at the point where we're ready to address expansion, we want to have a fair and open process so that anybody who is interested has the opportunity to apply and understands the rules of the road.
Adam, at the risk of undercutting the Vancouver and Montreal cases that we would like to see here, and this doesn't have to be expansion related. This can be about the viability of the market for TV growth as well. But you guys recently had an NBA game in Mexico City. The Capitanes obviously play there in the G League. How has the NBA's step into the Mexico City and larger Mexican market gone?
That's gone extraordinarily well. Also, I mean, we've played more games in Mexico City and in Mexico than any country outside the United States and Canada. I think it was something like our 32nd game in Mexico. That was a regular season game you're referencing from last week. I was there, sold out arena, tremendous interest. You referenced also that we have a G League team down in Mexico City. One of the things I said when I was down there is that we're certainly not ready to bring an NBA team to Mexico City presently, but that our G League is growing. And I see an opportunity potentially to have more G League teams in Mexico and in Latin America, for that matter, is to continue to create interest. And we also have an NBA Academy in Mexico City, recognizing that developing young players in Mexico, ultimately for the NBA and the WNBA, would have a huge impact on fan interest. But so far, millions of fans down in Mexico and Latin America, and they love their basketball there as well.
Speaks my language as a G League guy, so that's good to hear. Adam, this is a bit of a different tone in this question, but I know Charles Barkley brought it up with you recently and began this conversation about intimate partner violence or domestic violence at the national level, and that continues to be a story as Miles Bridges is set to return for the Hornets on Friday. I know he did a media availability earlier today. Now, I know there are like legal components to this as well and process components, but how do you guys as a league try to manage the message that maybe Bridges coming back while something else is still being investigated fully, the message that can send to other players, to fans, and, the lack of a consistent standard for penalties in these cases, I imagine has been a difficulty for you guys in the union. But how do you manage that, especially at a time where Bridges is coming back here?
Sure, a few things. From my standpoint, I believe we have been consistent in that we're applying the same principles to every case. I mean, no fact pattern is exactly alike, and I think that everybody's entitled to due process and a fair system, regardless of whether they're in a union or not. In this case, these players are represented by a strong union, and that's a collectively bargained process. But unless you're intimately into the facts of each case, you have to understand that the result is based on, going an investigation and a very deep understanding, at least the best we're in a position to do so, to understand exactly what happened. And in terms of new allegations, just put yourself in that player's shoes or anybody in which there's an allegation. I think everybody's entitled to due process, and everybody's entitled to a fair hearing. So to the extent there's other things that we're looking at, that's an independent investigation. And until there are findings there, it would be unfair to punish a player or anyone under those circumstances. We believe in the rule of law in this league, and we believe in due process.
Does the league feel in this case that there is, due process is something that should be afforded to everybody for sure. But I think part of that is also contrition, and part of that is sort of changes in behavior. In this case, is do you, as the league, do they see that from instances like Miles Bridges, for example?
Well, Yes, in deciding on any appropriate discipline, contrition, the player's reaction to the incidents, of course, is important. But once again, I don't want to prejudge any other allegations that have been made against him. That's why there are investigations. That's why there is a process in place.
For sure, for sure. On a different subject, I wanted to ask you, what is the league's stance on protests in and around NBA games? Because, we've seen that you have the benefit of a really active and really engaged player base that's willing to share their platform and extend them towards different causes. How is the league sort of ensuring that players are supported when they choose to use their platforms to support the causes that they feel passionate about?
One of the ways we can ensure that the players are supported is to talk directly to them about it, and for me to express support for players who use their platform to talk about issues that are important to them. And there's a long track record, and it precedes certainly me as commissioner, in which players have used their voices to speak out on important issues. We do talk to them about parameters for that type of speech or activity, more along the lines of being respectful, not content restrictions, but, well, I should say content restrictions if it came to hate speech, but that's generally not where we are. It's just time, place, and manner restrictions, what should happen on the court, for example, as opposed to what a player may choose to do at a press conference or on social media. And I think we've worked really well with our players and the Players Association on finding those standards. Occasionally there are issues that, again, similar to the last question you asked me, these become very fact-specific. But I think we've worked through it in a very successful way, and I think that NBA players have deservedly strong reputations for being important change makers in society.
Right. Okay. Listen, we know your time is valuable, and we only have a few more minutes here, so we wanted to close with some rapid-fire topics.
Something lighter for specifically.
Yeah, well, listen, it doesn't have to be light, but I think it's important in this case, too.
I mean, you're just going to pivot from, protest to skims here a little bit, so I thought I should preface it that the tone is changing a little bit.
We will be building up to skims.
Here comes an underwear question. All right.
No, not right away, at least. So we talked about the in-season tournament, and you've credited European soccer as some of the inspiration behind the in-season tournament. And obviously we see the similarities, in a sense, to Champions League. Do you have a European soccer club? Like, do you allow yourself to be a fan in a different league?
Yeah, I do allow myself to be a fan of teams. I grew up as a Yankee fan in New York, for example. In English soccer, the Kroenke family are the majority owners of Arsenal. Of course, they're the principal owners of the Denver Nuggets. So I've been to several Arsenal games over the years, and I'm a fan of that organization, just the way that the traditions around that team. But, I've been to FC Barcelona games, Real Madrid games over the years. So I'm generally a fan of how those leagues are operated and the deep traditions and fandoms that those clubs have developed.
All right. Put down the headline. Adam Silver is a gooner. This is great. I want to ask you about this, too, because it happens, I think, with a lot of NBA players and even others around the league. But do you have a burner account? Do not obviously expose what that account is, but do you have a burner account just to keep track of, what's being said generally across social media?
So the only account that I post any content on is an Instagram account that anyone can look up. It's at Adam Silver NBA.
Okay. It's a great plug. It's
also a great way to not entirely answer the question, because he just said that's the only one he posts from. So,
he's very clever.
There's some legalese there.
Yeah. And then I guess the last one, Blake, you wanted to ask the Skims partnership, so please go ahead.
That was you. That was your note in there. I guess, the reaction to that has obviously been a little bit fun, but also there's a large woman fan base, and Skims is not necessarily just for women as well. How fun has that been for you to put together? And can we actually use the product? Is there a hookup here?
So absolutely. So the place where the NBA got involved is Kim Kardashian created a new Skims line for men, and it began with underwear, and they're now moving into what I would have called pajamas, but I think they call leisure wear. And it's been a big hit so far. It's attracted enormous attention. Kim Kardashian's good at what she does, and as I previously said, I can attest that the product is excellent.
All right, we got to get some. We got to get some up in Canada here.
Yeah. All right, Commissioner, we've taken up a lot of your time, so we appreciate you being open and transparent with what we had to ask you. And yeah, we'll hope to see you back in Toronto sometime. When was the last time you were in Toronto, by the way?
Last time I was in Toronto was late last season.
Oh, okay.
I was
All
up
right.
there for a game with Larry Tannenbaum and Masai Ujiri. I went to the game with them. You got a great organization there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, maybe we'll see you in Vegas for the in-season tournament finals. We'll see how that goes starting Friday, too.
Right. There you go.
I'll be there.
All right. Thank you, Adam.
Yep. Thanks, guys.